Let's talk about this Iran deal a little bit. I saw that the Ayatollah Khamenei said today that Israel will not live to see the next 25 years. He again called America the Great Satan. American citizens continue to languish in Iranian jails, but Democrats say that this deal is somehow a good one for America and our allies. It looked like from your comments yesterday in committee that you definitely don't feel that way. Talk to us a little bit about this deal.
Well, this is a bad deal any way you look at it. You know, for the last 20 months I've been in Congress, I've been listening to the President of the United States and the Secretary of State give me the Iranian side of this deal. Ironically, last month when I was in Israel and met with Prime Minister Netanyahu from Israel, that's where I got the American side of it. Because he said very clearly, I don't want you to vote against this deal because it's bad for Israel. I want you to vote against it because it's bad for America. And it's bad for America. This deal gives them intercontinental ballistic missiles. That's the result of it. And they don't need intercontinental ballistic missiles to hit Israel. They need ICBMs to hit Europe and America. So let's be very clear what this is about. This is about a direct threat to the defense interests of the United States. And my friends on the other side of the aisle are just turned a blind eye to it. And what you saw in that video last night was a congressman from Massachusetts who was arguing with me, and I used John Kennedy, a former senator from Massachusetts, back at him. Because John Kennedy wrote a book, a senior thesis when he was at Harvard, that said why England slept. This is referring back to 1938, the Munich Agreement, which was an effort to appease Hitler that resulted in World War II, where we were trying to appease the Ayatollah, who still calls us the Great Satan and says Israel's done in 25 years. Well, I don't think Israel's done in 25 years because they will defend themselves. The question is, will America defend itself?
Do you think that there is a real possibility that Israel feels so pushed into a corner that they actually strike first?
I think that's a possibility, absolutely. And I think that they have shown in the past, they've done this in the past, that they have had the capability of doing it, not just the will, but the capability of doing it. If they do that, and we have to see the exact circumstances, but if they do that, my intention is to be fully supportive of them. They're protecting themselves, but as they are protecting themselves, they're actually protecting us too.
You know, I was glad to hear that that you had an opportunity to go over to Israel. I went a couple of years ago, and I think it is one of those things that you can't have a full appreciation for until you really see what they're up against there firsthand. And I recall going down to the southern part of Israel, down near Gaza, and if a siren went off, you had 1 minute to get to a bomb shelter before one of those rockets that Hamas launches over multiple times a day from Gaza. And it gave me this just new appreciation for what they're dealing with there. And what I also realized is these rockets, they're being funded by Iran. So much, not just there, but all over the world, terrorist activity being funded by Iran. And I saw one presidential candidate say that this deal makes the Obama administration the world's largest funder of terror. Do you think that that's an accurate statement?
Yes, because this deal allows $150 billion to get in the hands of Iran. They can take that money and do with it whatever they please to do with it. And they are the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. We know they fund Hamas there in Gaza. They fund Hezbollah there in Lebanon and Syria. They've funded the Houthis over in Yemen. They fund all sorts of terrorist groups. And some of these terrorists have shot and wounded and shot and killed United States military servicemen and women. So make no mistake about it, yes, this is a threat to Israel. This is a direct threat to the United States of America. And the people that are for it don't want me to say that, so the reaction I got against what I said last night in committee was that hit too close to home. And now I'm sorry it hit too close to home, but the truth is the truth is the truth is the truth.
We're talking to Congressman Bradley Byrne from down in Alabama's 1st Congressional District. I don't want to get too down in the weeds on the process up there in Washington, but there is one thing that I've gotten a lot of questions about, and frankly, I don't know how to answer it entirely. We know that if this were a treaty, it would require a 2/3 majority of the Senate to ratify it. So this is not a treaty, which puts you guys in Congress in a situation where you're not going to be able to overcome Obama's veto. Even if you reject the deal, Obama vetoes it, the thing goes into effect. My question is, why was this not a treaty from day one? Because isn't it Congress that set the process for how this is playing out?
Yeah, what happened was that the president, knowing that he couldn't get a 2/3 vote in the Senate, began negotiating on it as an agreement and not as a treaty from day one. So the way he's negotiated, the way he's put it together, it's not a treaty, it's an agreement. Now, here's the difference between an agreement and a treaty. A treaty is binding on future administrations. An agreement is not. So even if this deal goes forward under this agreement, the next president of the United States, who shows up in January of 2017, is not bound by it. If it was a treaty, it would be.
But wouldn't it perhaps have been the smarter move for Congress to say, no, if you want to go to negotiate this thing, go try to negotiate a treaty, and if you get a good deal, then we'll ratify it? Wouldn't that have been perhaps a better approach?
Well, under the Constitution, we don't get to tell the president this is how you negotiate a deal with another country. He gets to do that. That's his power. Now, if he negotiates it as a treaty, then we get to vote on it and say yes or no.
Okay.
But if he chooses to negotiate it as an agreement, and he negotiates agreements a lot, he doesn't have to have our approval for that. But he does on this particular deal because we forced on him a piece of legislation earlier the year that requires us to go forward and give our approval or disapproval.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, it was not Congress who set out the process by which this would happen. It was the president who said, I'm not pursuing a treaty, I'm going to pursue this agreement, and that's why the process has played out the way that it has.
That's exactly right.
Okay, gotcha.
And the people on the other side of him in the negotiation, they were willing to take it on that basis because they're betting that if they get a, quote, agreement as opposed to a treaty, that future administrations will feel bound to go by it and not be legally bound to go by it, but just feel like they're morally bound to go by it. Well, I'm listening to a lot of the people running for president this year, and more of them begin to say, I'm not going to comply with that. So good. I hope that they'll continue to say that, and we can continue to go back to all the people involved in this negotiation besides us and say, look, guys, if you're depending upon what Secretary Kerry told you in those negotiations about what our position is going to be after he's gone, don't do it, because you may find a different administration in there that takes a completely different position.
Now, you mentioned Hezbollah that operates in portions of Syria up there. Obviously, ISIS is now taking more and more control of different areas of Syria, and the civil war that's been going on for several years there now it's just led to an unbelievable humanitarian crisis. I had an opportunity to go to Jordan earlier this year and see it. And people are flooding into Jordan. They're flooding into now European countries, and it's really finally hit the mainstream here in the United States. We're even hearing some people say perhaps the United States should get involved in this refugee crisis and allow some of these folks to come here to the States. What do you think about that? Should the United States allow some of these refugees to come here?
Well, first of all, let's note the irony that all of these Muslims coming from Muslim countries are coming to the Great Satan. Okay, let's just note the irony of that. Secondly, I have tremendous national security concerns about letting in people from these areas. We know that they're coming from areas where there's been a dramatic amount of terrorist activities. How do we vet them? Because we need to be concerned about our internal security. Remember, those two Zarnev brothers that did the bombing at the Boston Marathon, one of them was here on papers. He wasn't a citizen. The other one was made a citizen less than a year before they did it. So just letting people in from that part of the world without being sure who they are, what their backgrounds are, do they mean us harm? If we can't be assured of that, we shouldn't let anybody in. So I'm very concerned about that, and I think whoever is going to be making that decision needs to be absolutely certain, individual by individual, who we're letting in. And, oh, by the way, we've already got an immigration problem of our own that has nothing to do with the Middle East, but it's already a huge problem for us, and we're struggling with that.
One of the things that's disturbed a lot of Christians over here, and I can say me personally as well, is that in all of this chaos over there, there are a very, very, very small minority of Christians in that region of the world who are being persecuted like we can't even imagine. And from talking to some of them there, I can tell you that they, and you know this, I'm not telling you anything, but they feel like that the Obama administration has abandoned them. And so I'm really conflicted about this because I have a lot of the security concerns that you do, but I also am reminded of what the poem on the Statue of Liberty really means. Give us your tired, give us your poor, give us your huddled masses. It was basically saying the United States of America is a refuge for persecuted people all over the world, and even our ancestors who fled religious persecution to come here, that's a part of our history, our heritage, and who we are as a nation. Is there anything that we could be doing for the persecuted Christians that are in that region of the world? And I don't know how you vet those people out. I'm just trying to think, is there anything that we could do?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Number one, we need to go to all of our allies over there that we provide any sort of military or non-military aid to and say, you're not getting any more aid from us if you don't take care of these religious minorities, which in the Middle East means Christians. Number two, when we have valid refugees, people who are truly refugees from religious oppression, then that has its own category under our laws for admitting you to this country. Remember the line that you didn't give from the Emerald Lazarus poem, give me your tired, your poor, give me your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. If they really yearn to breathe free and to be American like we are, then I welcome them in this country. But we've got to keep our guard up and understand that there are people in that part of the world who they don't yearn to breathe free. They yearn to kill those of us that want to breathe free. And we've got to protect ourselves and our way of life first and foremost.
That's a great answer. Let's go to the Planned Parenthood stuff that we've been watching for the last couple of months since the videos brought it into the forefront. Now this hit home a little bit even closer because there was the Mobile Planned Parenthood facility down there in your hometown who had a 14-year-old little girl who they performed 2 abortions on in the span of about 4 months. And as a part of that, it is incumbent upon them, because this girl is underage, to report to the proper authorities that there is that this looks like a sexual abuse situation there. They did not report that. What was your reaction when you saw that story?
Well, it didn't make me any more against Planned Parenthood than I already was, because I was pretty against it. I just think it's another piece of evidence that Planned Parenthood shows a total disregard for the law and for basic humanity. Think about this. Here is a 14-year-old young girl who's been impregnated not once but twice. I mean, just that alone should be a red flag to them. And yet they went forward, didn't do anything as they were supposed to do under state law to report it, and just gave her an abortion. I mean, if that doesn't show you how sick this is, how far away we are from what should be basic notions of civility and humanity, then I don't know what will, although these videos are coming very close to being the most gross and egregious abuse of basic medical powers that I can imagine. I mean, look at what we've seen. They are selling baby body parts, and they are totally, totally insensitive as to what they're doing.
What would you say to exasperated Republicans out there who are frustrated that we've got control of both the House and the Senate, and yet it looks like Planned Parenthood is going to continue on getting the same level of federal funding that they have in years past?
Well, the problem is over in the Senate. You know, we pass things over here in the House, we send them over to the Senate, and they die. And they die because we have 54 Republicans, not 60, and they have a self-imposed rule in the Senate. It's not a constitutional rule. It's self-imposed that says you have to have 60 votes to bring a bill up for a vote. Well, give me a break. I mean, why would we adhere to that rule when we're in power? When Harry Reid was in power, he did what he wanted to do with the rules. So why are we acting like there's some great principle involved here? The only way for the will of the majority to be worked in this country, and it was the will of the majority of this country for us to have a Republican House and Republican Senate, is for that Senate to be able to work, and they can't work so long as 6 Democrats can decide, well, we're not going to vote for it, and that's it. It's done. We don't. Nothing happens. That's where the frustration's coming from.
I got one more issue I wanted to touch on with you before you go. We've been watching closely up in Kentucky. Kim Davis, the Rowan County clerk there, who was jailed for refusing to issue marriage licenses, saying that she would not do it on the basis that it violated her Christian beliefs. What do you think about this? You know, I've seen several people that I really respect on both sides of this. I've seen some presidential candidates that I like a lot saying that this is a clear violation of her religious liberty. I've seen a guy like Antonin Scalia, who is one of the few guys on the Supreme Court that I think gets it right 99% of the time, saying that, look, the law is what the law is. She should have just issued the marriage license or go find another job. What's your take on that situation?
Well, I think she should be able to exercise her religious freedom and her religious liberty. Now, there are other ways for the law to be complied with than forcing her to do it. And now, the court's found a way to do it because her deputies are going to do it. Her name's not on there. Good. I think that's, a common sense way of dealing with it. Here's the deal, Cliff. We've got the Supreme Court's decision we've got. And now those of us that feel strong about religious liberty have got to do everything we can to protect the religious liberty of every individual in this country, not just her, but people in the private sector and business, people that run religious universities and hospitals. We've got to continue to stand up for their right to say that violates my religious conscience so that they can be free to go forward with their religious conscience and not have big, bad, big brother lean down on them and make them do something that's against what they believe.